What's up, Managing Madrid podcast listeners? This is Kiyan Sobhani coming at you from Liverpool. It is game day later on tonight. Real Madrid play at Anfield in the Champions League first leg round of 16 clash. And what you're about to listen to is a small clip taken from this weekend's preview podcast we did with the Anfield wrap. That went up over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. We're moving virtually everything to patreon.com/Managing Madrid. So you will get a couple free episodes per week, but we're going to be near daily now on Patreon. So if you wanted access to this in a timely fashion, just make sure you're a patron. And also if you want access to tonight's post-game show live on Zoom, where I will head back from Anfield to my Airbnb, hop on Zoom with Sid. We're going to log on and do a post-game breakdown, a reaction to Real Madrid's performance and everything that happens at Anfield, and also take questions live on Zoom. So that's over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. Enjoy the clip, enjoy tonight's game, and we'll see you after the game. So why don't we start from the top, Josh? What is happening? Can you bring us up to speed about what is happening for you guys in the Premier League this season? What's going on?
Oh, how long have you got? I think when you came on our podcast before, and by the way, if there are any people listening to this, I should also say that if you don't have to sort of subscribe straight away. If there's Real Madrid fans listening who think, oh, why would I want Liverpool content? You can just download the Anfield app, and once you set up an account on there, you'll get free tokens, which you can listen to just me and Kiyan talking annually. Would you probably be able to spend your tokens on one of our annual shows? So that's a way of getting the content, but. I mean, when you said on our show you run through the issues, it's a long list of issues at Real Madrid currently, and that's what it's felt like at Liverpool this season too. There's been a combination, which is, I guess, would be headlined by injuries, although Liverpool fans are probably not taken as kindly to injury issues this season as maybe they did 2 years ago during lockdown when Liverpool had the same injury issues, because I think at that point, most people thought Liverpool should have strengthened the squad more. They go out and sign Ibrahima Konate after that COVID season to sort of bolster the defensive ranks, make sure the same thing won't happen in defence. But that season was the last time that Liverpool made a signing in midfield, which was Thiago Alcantara. Since then, they've not made a single midfield signing, and it's showing. Liverpool have an ageing midfield, a midfield who have dipped in form from the way they played last season. They played, a lot of games last season, going all the way in all competitions, and only losing out in the Premier League and the Champions League in the final games of both of those, which has clearly taken its toll physically because of the number of games played, taken its toll mentally to have, sort of climbed the mountain and just missed, the two biggest prizes when they've got to the summit of the mountain. And as I say, that the injuries and the transfer side of things has felt like a bit of an overarching concern. Klopp has tried to change things quite a lot. The system has switched, week to week at some points as he tries to find the right formula. But if you watched the Everton game on Monday, anybody who's listening to this, there was some sort of green shoots of recovery for Liverpool. Liverpool look much more like themselves, but the problem is Liverpool have had a couple of those games this season that have sort of felt a bit like false dawns. It's time now, really, and the onus is on the manager and on the players to prove that it's not just a one-off win and to go out and put a run of form together.
Yeah, I can kind of see the evolution on my end in some sense. Again, a much less informed opinion, obviously, and analysis than you, who watches the team and knows the team. Your life is to cover the team every day. Just by example, I've been trying to watch every single Liverpool game since we drew you guys. The game against Brentford, for example, the defense was so bad in that game. And also just the way you guys held onto the ball. But then you look at the game against Everton, and there's a clear progress from that game to the Everton game. And it seems like maybe some of the pieces are coming together for both teams. Like, as I mentioned to you, Real Madrid are kind of getting some stuff together, some momentum heading into the tie. You guys also, in addition to the Everton game, correct me if I'm wrong, Van Dijk is going to be back for the Newcastle game this weekend. Luis Diaz is back in training. So from a health perspective, can you give an update there as well?
Yeah, so Van Dijk would be the big one really. He was on the bench against Everton, but never made it onto the pitch. For that game against Everton, we did get Diogo Jota and Roberto Firmino back. They have both. Well, Firmino's probably been out for about 8 weeks now. Jota's been out for months. He got injured in the win over Man City, which feels like years ago now, because it was, as I say, a really good performance, which should have been Liverpool going on to more. And I think they conspired to lose the next game, or maybe draw the next game, if I remember rightly. So they've been without some key players for a long time, and those three players in particular are important because you referenced the defense against Brentford and how bad it was. It's been like that for so many games over the course of the season, and especially since Van Dijk's been injured. He really is the sort of linchpin, I guess, that holds that entire defence together. So we're hoping it will be bolstered by his return. Diogo Jota is a crucial player for Liverpool, because even though sometimes he's not wholly involved in Liverpool's play, he's not really the best passer of the ball. He can be quite sloppy on the ball sometimes, but he's so good at just getting on the end of things. He's so good at winning headers and scoring first goals in games, which is so crucial, because we've got players like Mo Salah and Darwin Núñez, if you want to throw him in with a sort of patchy goal scoring record this season, but players who can score goals in bunches, but generally they're not the first goal in games. It's not that sort of one which breaks the deadlock. That's where Jota has been so important. And then, I mentioned the switching of systems and Liverpool's identity. Firmino has been Liverpool's identity personified really for so many years now, and it shouldn't have really come to that this season. Liverpool maybe should have done a bit more in previous seasons to make sure that he wasn't so important, because he is getting to an age where he's past his sort of prime years now. But he showed in the first part of this season that even when Liverpool weren't performing well, he was still scoring goals, keeping Liverpool in games, and generally contributing so much to the all-round play. So they're the three who are coming back to full fitness now, and three players who are really crucial to Liverpool, especially timing wise, as you say, clicking back into gear.
It feels like your defense has regressed, and I'm curious to know, what about your press? I mean, Klopp has been known as the gegenpressing master, the guy like Liverpool win the ball high up the pitch. The numbers say your press isn't as aggressive or efficient as last year. So what about like the defensive shape and what's going on defensively? I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah, it's a tough one really, in the sense that I think I ran through the list of problems before, and a lot of these conversations come back to transfers. Ultimately, I referenced the amount of games that Liverpool played last season, but Liverpool had a huge squad last season to deal with a lot of that. I mean, two players who left in the summer were Divock Origi and Takumi Minamino, who played so much, particularly in the early rounds of the domestic cups, but then also featured in later Premier League and Champions League games and made crucial contributions. We don't really have those players this season, partly because the front line has been wrecked by injury, but also just because we don't necessarily have those natural finishers and natural strikers to come off the bench. Liverpool's options up front are much more sort of versatile options now. There's been a few sort of, I guess, teething issues for players, like Darwin Núñez in more recent times, like Cody Gakpo, because we're having to teach them how to be a part of this Liverpool system sort of on the job. And I think there's been some struggles that have come with that in terms of shape, in terms of, you use the word efficiency of the press. I think that's sort of, that would be the key for me really, is that the press has been much less efficient than it was, last season, particularly in Liverpool's prime seasons. The season Liverpool in the league is the one that we all look back to, that spell before the pandemic takes hold. Liverpool are basically playing perfect, winning football, and not perfect in the sense that they're blowing teams away, but they just made life so much more difficult for opposition than they do these days. They encourage opposition too much these days, and that's because they don't press as well. They leave gaps. The defence lapses too much in moments, makes too many mistakes. The game against Wolves is one that sticks out as probably being Liverpool's biggest horror show this season, but the tempo of it was set from early on. Joel Matip gets the ball in a defensive position, tries to play a cross-field pass to Darwin Núñez, which is a bit of a Liverpool trademark, is play it back to the centre-back and play a long diagonal ball out and try and pick up the scraps from that. And instead of it going to Nunez, he kicked it right at Ruben Neves. Ruben Neves took it down on his chest, controlled it, passed it forward, and Wolves had a chance to score straight away. And then minutes later, Matip had scored an own goal, and that sort of is Liverpool's season in a microcosm in terms of that defensive shape, in terms of, not picking up someone like Ruben Neves who's capitalising on a mistake, not breaking down that counter attack with a counter press that we've been so good at over the years, and then the lapse in a defensive moment where Joel Matip let the ball run on, ends up scoring an own goal. As I say, that one goal pretty much summed up Liverpool's entire problem this season. But there's many problems that feed into that. I think the one that most would go back to is the transfers and the lack of recruitment that Liverpool have put in. That's seen the squad age a little bit, seen Liverpool not evolve as well as they probably should have done. You mentioned the problems almost feeling like they're getting worse year on year. It's because Liverpool just haven't evolved as a side well enough from the point that they won the league, which sounds ridiculous to say because we nearly did the unprecedented last year. We're minutes away from things being different in the Premier League. We're probably, Emi Martinez playing for Aston Villa away from winning the Premier League. With Thibaut Courtois not having the performance of his life in Paris away from winning the Champions League. And I know these are all if buts or maybes, but it shows you how close Liverpool were to winning the lot that last season, and would have all had to have probably retired off the back of that. But there's just been too many problems this season, and the problems that a lot of people have seen coming for a long time that funnily enough, like runs like last season, almost paper over the cracks because everything just goes right in moments last season, and everything has gone wrong in those moments this season.